This week on Personally Speaking, we're delighted to welcome back to Personally Speaking the great actress and Tony Award winner, Kelli O Hara. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Monsignor Jim Lisante, and stage and screen actress Kelli O Hara joins me now. Kelli is currently starring on Broadway in the musical Days of Wine and Roses, and she marks her 12th Broadway show with this production. Kelli has been nominated for 7 Tony Awards, winning the 2015 Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical for The King and I. She is also an Emmy, Olivier, and 2-time Grammy-nominated artist who made history as the first to cross over from Broadway to opera with her Metropolitan Opera debut in 2015. Kelli's television credits include The Gilded Age, 13 Reasons Why, and The Accidental Wolf. The Times has hailed her as Broadway musical's undisputed queen, and she was awarded the prestigious Drama League's Distinguished Achievement in Musical Theater Award in 2019. Kelli O Hara is here with us today to talk about her life, her career, her family, her faith, her life on Broadway, and the values that mean the most to her. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome back to Personally Speaking, the Tony Award-winning actress, Kelli O Hara. Before we go to our interview with Kelli, let's listen to Kelli O Hara singing a song from Days of Wine and Roses.
Forgiveness, I can feel it in my spine. I can teach lawyer now, teach what I know. Could be useful now, with no great breadth of experience, but one great connection.
We have Kelli O Hara with us, and she's starring in Days of Wine and Roses on Broadway with Brian Darcy James, another guest on our program who we love. And Kelli, first of all, thanks for coming on the program. And I'm going to start with a question that in 43 years of priesthood, I can't answer, but I see it all the time. So every weekend I get to do weddings for couples. And then later on, I get to counsel a lot of these same couples. And they'll tell me so often, and this goes to the theme of Days in Wine and Roses, I knew there might be a problem. I saw there was a problem, but I thought marriage could fix it, or I thought love could fix it. And do you have any insight, because of this role you've played in Days of Wine and Roses, why some people, knowing that they're walking into disaster, especially where alcohol or drugs are concerned, go ahead anyway?
I mean, my first instinct is to answer that with I want to hope that most people believe in something better, and they have a core bit of hope inside of them, and as disastrous as that sometimes comes out, it really is based on that hope and that faith, or um, that chance that things might go the way we want them to, and in these circumstances when they don't, that is really hopefully that is in the minority, I'm not sure it is. I'm just saying, like, that's
Right.
the human nature to try to hope and believe in survival and believe in the better thing. We all want to counsel our children and people we know and people we love to do their due diligence more deeply. Is this something that before you take the vows of marriage, are you getting started on this work? Does it look
Yeah.
like something's going to change, or are you actually turning a blind eye and not just hoping, but also being, um, you know, pretending it's not there,
Right.
which is the problem. I
Right.
think we can hope as long as we put action to that hope.
Before you came on, Kelly, we played a clip for our listeners and watchers, and it was the song about forgiveness.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you too, how easy or hard is it, do you think, because you're a married person too, to overlook a lot, to forgive a lot? Does forgiveness come easily to you?
You know, there's a quote that I often look at, which I think is pretty powerful. And it says, resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Oh, right.
And I think that what that says to me is if I'm holding something in me and I'm not forgiving, then no matter what I want the other person to realize or feel or come to terms with, it's only me that's hurting. I'm hurting myself. And I think one of the biggest, the hardest things in humanity is to forgive not only others, but yourself. But I think that's what makes us sick. That's what makes us, whether it's emotionally or physically, I think it's holding on to anger. And you know what? We can't change another person. We can't. I mean, this is one of the things that we talk about in the show. You can't control someone else's addiction. You have to look at it. You have to look at yourself and see what you can change. And that's so I believe in it fully. It's not always easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but I know that it's a priority of mine.
Kelly O'Hara is our guest. Kelly, in doing a lot of counseling, pastoral counseling, so often I'll find out that she married a man whose own father had been also alcoholic, that so often alcohol runs as a family disease. I mentioned that right behind me is a picture of my mom and dad. And I know so much of who I am. Thank God alcohol is not part of the legacy, but I know I'm both mom and dad. Looking back to your own upbringing, when you look to the family of origin that made Kelly O'Hara who she is, what did they do right in raising you?
Well, I do think that there was forgiveness. We were
Ah,
an Irish Catholic family. We'd have our bouts, and then we'd all get together, and just the main thing was love. The main thing was family, loyalty, coming back to each other. You know, in our family, we never had, and hopefully never will have that moment where we're just not speaking to each other. It's
yeah,
like when those types of things happen, we just had to get it over. We had to get to
right.
each other,
Yeah.
fix it, get to whatever. And a lot of that had to do with being apologetic and being humble
Mhm.
and saying, look, I did something wrong. I was not doing my best just then. I'm sorry, which leads to the other person saying, I'm sorry too. And that's really important in families. And that's what I did have. That's what went right. Because I still look back on that and know that I was taught, maybe not in 5 minutes, walk away for a second, but eventually you have to take responsibility for your part in anything, in any relationship. And it always takes several people to, sorry about the noise. It always takes several people to make relationships work, between two people, three people, a family of 10, whatever it is. Everyone has to come to the table. And my parents were really good about teaching us that and showing and modeling it.
That's great. Kelly O'Hara, so I guess, Kelly, again, every weekend having the privilege to witness people's marriages, one of the ways I am best prepared to preach the homily is by saying, look, I don't want this to be a canned talk on marriage and love. I want you to tell me about your love and about how you make it work. So each bride and groom will write me an essay on what it is that is uniquely special to their relationship and to the person they've chosen that makes they think the marriage possible. So you and Greg, what did you see in Greg that you said, I can build a life with this guy?
Well, listen, it's cliche as it sounds. I had one of those situations where I saw him across a crowded room and knew that he was for me. I can't explain it. I'll never be able to explain it, nor do I think it happens for everyone. I'm not sure why I felt that way about him. It was a feeling of knowing him somehow before. I saw him and I thought that person is somewhere in my life. He's been here. I've known him. Don't know what that means. But once I got to, it wouldn't have stayed unless the goods were there. Once we got to know each other, one of the things that was really appealing about him is that he came from a really strong family.
Okay.
His parents, until his mother died, they were together for 50 years. They both came from strong units, a family, and they believed in that sort of circle. And we both had that same upbringing, and so there were a lot of likenesses there. Um, I just find Greg to be a very honest person. Um, Listen, we're in a marriage for almost 20 years now, and there's all sorts of things that happen in a marriage and ups and downs. And we're both off doing our art and coming back, and we're raising two children. But we always come back to each other, and we know what the priority is, and we help each other remember the priority. And there he is there doing his thing. But yeah, no, I think that's something that we share, and so we didn't have to bend each other to our way of thinking that way.
Right.
That made it easier.
Okay. Kelli O'Hara's our guest. Kelli, I had read years ago an autobiography by Katharine Hepburn called Me, of all things. I love it. And she said very powerfully in there, no, I never did have children, and I chose not to have children because she said, I am fundamentally a selfish pig, is what she said. And she said, and you can't be selfish in raising children. Now you've got Charlotte and Owen. And I'm just wondering, like, how do you do it? We talk all the time in the church about hoping that Pope Francis will take that extra step and let priests get married and have optional celibacy. And I hope it comes before I'm 89. But I mention that because I do think it's got to be challenging, not just to be in a marriage, but to raise kids. Uh, any insights by you as a mom, as a parent, into like how do you even teach your kids values that matter to you? What's the best way to get it across to these kids you love?
Well, I mean, selfishness is a good word to start with. I mean, I think she was very strong in admitting that to herself and
Yep.
to statement to the world. I don't feel that way. I feel like I have a lot
Oh.
that I want to give to my children. Let me just start by saying, though, I've never done it alone. My
Yeah.
husband and I and our parents and our friends and babysitters, and we've
Yeah.
made this sort of a village, and my kids are surrounded by love. One of the things I learned early on, though, about having a career and having my children was not to apologize for my career, but
Yeah.
also not to need to apologize for it. In other words,
Right.
if my career is bringing them pain, yes, sometimes I'm away, and that's hard. That's hard on all of us. But to celebrate my career, to do it in a way that can be balanced, that I give them a lot of my time and I give my career a lot of time, but also to make them part of it. They go to the theater with me many Sundays.
Mm.
I make my dressing room a place that they can come. I make the people that I work with, people that love my children and my children love to see. And I've always tried to celebrate it so they can see that it brings me joy, but I also try to make them know that they bring me my most joy, the most joy that I have. So um, that was something I had to learn. I kind of learned the hard way. If you apologize, I'm so sorry, I have to go to work. I'm so sorry, I don't want to go to work. Then at 3 years old, they think work's bad. Mom doesn't
Yeah.
want it, and
Right.
I don't want it, right? So it was a good piece of advice I remember receiving to not apologize, but help them celebrate what you do and that you have a passion like
Yeah.
that. And hopefully they will too. They'll have the same mindset about that.
I love the whole concept of the community it takes to build a family.
Mhm.
I was caretaker for my mom until she went to heaven last May at 102, and people thought, isn't this wonderful that he takes care of his mom? But I said at the funeral, I never thought I'd quote Hillary Clinton, but it does take a village, and without the help I had, I couldn't have done it. You're saying every family is that way. We've got to be interdependent. And let me ask you a question that's kind of unusual to ask you because anyone going online or reading newspapers would see that you are so incredibly loved by a lot of people, but especially by critics of theater and the arts. They just write powerfully about you. But I'm just wondering, we had Michael Urie on recently, and Michael said, I don't read critics because I might believe the good stuff and I might be angry about the bad stuff. So it's best not to read them. Do you let critics into your head, Kelli?
No, I don't
Okay.
ever read one thing.
Wow.
I think it's important. I totally, there's no judgment on those who do,
Yeah.
but I love doing this, and I need to believe in it. I need to believe in what I'm doing. Otherwise it really doesn't, there's no honesty in it for me.
Hmm.
And what happens is if you let a lot of voices in, you stop having this intimate relationship with what you do and the characters you play and what you put into them. It's the same thing as life. You start to let people influence your confidence or your validity, in this business. And
Mhm.
I can't afford to do that. Some days I think it's because I'm not strong enough, and some days it's because I think I'm really strong, to not have to read them or have that validation from them, but try to find it in myself. And so I read one review when I first started this business, and I never read one again, because it stuck in my head in a way
Yeah.
that I didn't like, that I didn't, it was on stage with me. And I thought, I didn't invite you here.
Right, right, right.
And listen, if it's a good one, I love that. I want good reviews. I want people to to appreciate what I'm doing. And I would love to know that. I have my ways. My husband will say, after a big Broadway opening, he'll say, you're okay. He'll thumbs up or whatever. And I've definitely gleaned the other nights, the other times in my career where, it's probably been better than this. But you just, the individual statements, I can only imagine what young women historically through all the years. Or I was just reading Barbara Streisand's memoir where her entire intro is about all the things that were said about her. And can you imagine being compared to a wet marsupial, animal, or something, the mean things people say. And I don't know. I don't want that to take up any space in my head.
Yeah. Kelli O Hara is our guest. She's appearing on Broadway in Days of Wine and Roses. Your wonderful co-star, Brian Darcy James, had been a guest on our program. Something interesting happened. He came with a publicist, and after we talked about the shows he was in, he had been powerfully affected by the early death of his dad, and we talked about going to the spiritual realm, about believing in life beyond this life, and he hoped and wanted to believe in heaven. But anyway, in the middle of it all, the publicist said, "No, no, 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 no. Let's only talk about the show. Let's not talk about the spiritual stuff." And it was interesting. He kind of stood up nicely to his publicist and said, "No, I want sometimes to talk about things like this. And we've talked plenty about the show. But let me ask you, because, you come from this Irish Catholic family out in Oklahoma. Have you found it in a very secular city where you make your home and a lot of us come to see you? Is it easy to be a spiritually evolving person in a climate where spirituality or religion is not so often so popular?"
Well, no, it's not easy. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There was never any promise that it was going to be easy or supported.
Right, right.
Um, I'm a person who lives with a lot of faith, but
Yeah.
I was also raised, even Catholic. Um, this is an interesting and thing, and I've quoted this story, and I'll try to make it quick. My dad, my mom converted to Catholicism when she married my dad, and we
Okay.
grew up in the Catholic Church. And my dad was very dedicated to doing that because his mother had been disowned by her whole family,
Wow.
Church of Christ, for marrying my grandpa. He was Catholic, and that was just no, 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 no.
Right.
In Western Oklahoma. And
Right.
my dad made it it was a very big priority for him to raise his kids in the Catholic Church because of her sacrifices.
Yeah.
However, my dad had certain thoughts about it. He educates himself in many, many ways and had a lot of feelings. But I remember him standing at the church, at her funeral, giving her eulogy, and he was very close to his mother. And he said, "Look, I've gone through my life questioning this faith, this religion,
Yeah.
sometimes not believing anything at all, sometimes going headfirst into it. But the one thing that I need to know is that I'll see this woman again. And it's the one thing that tells me that I might." And I remember thinking to myself, well, if that's a religion, then that's mine. I
Yeah.
want to believe in something greater. You know,
Right.
I know it's easy to be a cafeteria Catholic, as they say.
Yes. Yeah.
um, but I have, again, I'm a thinking person, an educated person. I can't pull the wool over my eyes. There are many things that are of concern to me. And
Yeah.
so I tend to be someone who believes in something greater than myself, believes in faith, uh, in God. But I would never turn my back
Mm.
on any human being because I thought that a religion told me to. That
Yeah.
to me would be the most un-Christian like thing I could ever do.
Yeah.
If I was told to, then I would really question that. And so, because that's against everything I was ever taught.
Yeah.
And so that's why sometimes in the current landscape, I get very confused about what's happening. It does not make any sense to me. I
Mm.
believe that that
Yeah.
every single human being is worth.
That's great, Kelly. And we'll talk about intolerance in just a moment. But you reminded me by what you said about your dad that I said recently in church that at night it's only 9 months in, but I go into the room that my mom lived in the rectory and I sit at the edge of the bed where she lived. And I said, I'm sure hoping this whole heaven thing is true because I really want to see you again.
Yeah.
And please, God, let it be true that there is, in fact, a time in which we'll, as the Lord says, see you again. But I mentioned that because what struck me is how many people in my congregation said, like, we thought it was like wrong to have doubts. And I said, if you're a thinking person, you're going to have doubts. And questioning is a good thing. One of the things I want to talk to you about coming from Oklahoma is intolerance, not about Oklahoma intolerance, but societal intolerance. I love lots of stuff about Pope Francis. And one of them is that so often in the past, we had demonized people who were gay. And along comes this Pope who says, who am I to judge? And does any number of other things that are long overdue tolerance. You came from Oklahoma and then you come to New York, which is a city with a lot of open ideas. But did you come from Oklahoma with a more closed idea of accepting other people like those who are homosexual? Or did you come because you were a theater arts person, even in Oklahoma, with a mind that was open to let's just welcome everybody?
I mean, I don't want to misremember, but I mean, I'm 99.9% sure that I always just didn't, it wasn't my business to judge people. And not only
Mm,
that, but I loved some of my best friends in college are gay people, you know, and
yeah.
that was in Oklahoma. There are gay people in Oklahoma, Oklahomans.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry to shock you. There's a whole
Oh
bunch
my
of them.
God.
There's, and I remember my parents loving those friends too. I was given, I just feel like it's one of those things where who am I to give
Yeah.
my opinions about anything? Nor would, I mean, my opinions wouldn't be uh, against that. But even if I felt that way, I would never try to live someone else's life or worry for their, especially the beautiful people, parents, couples that I know who are gay.
Mhm.
They're some of the best people I know, and so I'm very outspoken about that, and I always have been. Just because I think when you don't know, when you don't have a lot around you, you know, it's easy to do that because you don't have to look someone in the eye and say, I don't believe in you. I
Yeah.
don't believe in your life. I don't validate you. I understand that. If you never see it, it's easier to say, I absolutely do not agree. But
Yeah.
when you love people, and let's say it's your child, when you love people, you say, they're just people.
Yeah.
They're just people. You know, I have a lot of friends who are very proud of who they are. I have a lot of friends who have struggled and said, "Do you think I would wish this?" You
Yeah.
know, there's different roads, but I know that for me, I never questioned who people were or thought, "Wow, I really think you're a bad person."
Kelli O Hara is our guest. I hope our listeners and viewers will catch Days of Wine and Roses and everything Kelly's in. But Kelly, I promise this is going to be the last question. But um, I'm troubled. I guess you are. We're all troubled by this incredible division, not just in America but throughout the world. That just people set against each other, families that can't talk because they have such strong opposing opinions. I'm reminded years ago when I had interviewed the film director Frank Capra. He had said human illness is not the biggest problem. He said it's human discouragement, and I think a lot of us do get discouraged. A lack of hope in the world right now for finding a path to loving each other, forgiving each other, being a family of humanity again. How does Kelli O Hara handle keeping hope alive?
Oh, it's been a challenge as of
Mm,
more recently. I admit you know, you talk to some people and they just say, "Oh, you're too dramatic. You know, you're too dark. Why do you go into those subjects? Why are you worried so much?" And then you have the friends who we just wallow. You know, what's happening? What's happening to the future of our country? Why are we dividing so much more deeply than we ever have? And you'll have the people say, we're not. It's so much better." Um, I think those differences in opinion, or maybe it's our news sources where we get certain things, and so then I try to really step back and choose wisely, and I try to be balanced, and I try to find hope. But I think sometimes what we're not doing because of social media and all the things we do on our computers, we're not just turning to our neighbor and remembering that this is a beautiful human being, but I'm looking at this larger picture and hearing about every disaster and everything. It's becoming so sort of volatile to have too much information when really there are so many good people in the world who still make room for every type of person, who still want every type of person to come together and love each other. I think some hatred has been sown. I think because there's power in that for some people, but I will never believe that. I will never be talked into taking from some to give to others will ever be of value. I will never think that. I will never move by money alone or
Yeah.
power alone. Um, I really don't care if I gave all mine away just so we could have more equality. And I believe that a society is better when all of its citizens are feeling worthy and they're fed and they're feeling like they deserve to be here.
Yeah.
I will always think we'll be safer by that. We'll be happier by that. And you don't have to agree or you don't have to understand each other. But
Yeah.
some of the behavior feels animalistic, and maybe I feel more evolved than that. And I believe that we are better than that. We're smarter than that. And so the sadness comes from something, it's because I just don't get it. I don't get it. I never want to hate or fear people.
Right. Right.
I want us all to love and trust each other. But sometimes I sound like a Pollyanna, and you know what? I'm not going to stop.
Yeah, that's not a bad accusation at all. I want to thank Kelli O'Hara for being with us. Kelli O'Hara, I mentioned before the program, was last our guest in 2014, and we mustn't go between 2014 and 2024 again without talking because you add so much. Obviously, Kelli, we talk about this experience of you in theater and your wonderful talents and gifts, but also I thank you today for talking about your family and your faith and the society in which we live, and hope can be better than it already is. So thanks for talking about all these things on Personally Speaking. You're a wonderful gift to us, and I'm grateful to you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
As we end today's program, I want to thank you all for being with us. If you need to reach me, you can do that at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. We're also, you're probably listening to this on Sirius XM, the Catholic channel, but if you want to watch the program, we're on YouTube. You can search under Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante. We're also on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante and on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. Please share and tell your friends and family about our program. I've been privileged to serve as host and executive producer, Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.